Good evening, LMS. Tonight we're going to be reading The Ugly Duckling with permission from Honey Bear Books. At the far edge of a barnyard, near the edge of a pond, a mother duck sat upon her nest, waiting for her eggs to hatch. One by one, they cracked open and out popped her little ducklings with a peep, 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 all except one egg, which remained whole no matter how long the mother duck sat upon it. One day, an old duck came to visit. "It's probably a turkey egg," she said in a huff. "You're wasting your time with it." But the mother duck loved it just the same and patiently waited for the egg to hatch. Finally, it did. As the shell cracked open, out popped an odd little creature that didn't look at all like the other little ducklings who were quacking nearby. Patiently, the mother duck led all her babies into the pond to learn to swim. But her little ugly duckling flapped and splashed and made a mess of the swimming lesson. In the barnyard, the other ducks were quite mean to the duckling, always pecking at him and chasing him away. At the pond, the other ducklings pulled at his feathers and didn't want him to join in their fun. When the duckling was nearby, the frogs quickly leaped away into the water. The duckling peered into the pond and saw his reflection. "Everyone runs away from me because I'm so ugly," he told himself sadly. Even the hen and the rooster squawked and kicked whenever they saw the duckling. Finally, the sad little duckling swam around the reeds all by himself. When the duckling had grown bigger, he decided to leave the barnyard and set off on his own. But the wild ducks and geese snubbed him too, and chased him from their corner of the pond. Alone in the water, the duckling heard splashing. He was very frightened. When he saw it was a great hunting dog, he knew his days were over. But when the dog reached the duckling, it turned away and ran towards its master. "I'm not even too ugly for the hunting dog to bother with me," the unhappy duckling thought, leaving the pond. The duckling walked on and on. He was hungry and so cold and so tired. Then he saw the cottage. In it lived a kindly old woman with a hen and a cat. The woman welcomed the duckling to come live with them. But the cat and hen were not so kind. They didn't want to share their new home with this odd-looking newcomer. In fact, they made the duckling so unhappy that he couldn't live there either. Winter had come, but the duckling wandered out into the night. Far off through the falling snow, he saw beautiful long-necked birds flying into the air. Their song filled his heart, but he knew they'd shun him too, so he just crept sadly along. Until he could walk no further, weak from hunger and overcome by the cold, the duckling lay half frozen at the pond's edge, until a kindly farmer found the poor duckling, wrapped him in a blanket, and took him home. But the farmer's children grabbed at the duckling and squabbled over who would hold him and who would feed him. As the duckling fled to be free of them, he knocked over the farmer's wife's dishes and broke them to pieces. "Scat, scat, you troublesome bird," she shouted, chasing the duckling out into the snow. The days grew longer. Somehow, the duckling had survived the winter. Blooms began to appear on the trees, and the flowers began to bud, and the duckling knew he'd grown quite big. He stretched his wings and squawked a honk, a sound he had heard before. With a flap of his mighty wings, he flew into the air, but not before he saw his reflection in the great pond below. Suddenly, he knew he wasn't a duck at all. He flew off to join the others of his kind that he'd seen from across the pond months before. When he landed near them, they gathered around to welcome him. He was the most beautiful of all the birds that had ever come to swim in the pond. The ugly duckling had grown into a beautiful swan. So remember, boys and girls, to always love yourself for who you are and to always be kind to others. Have a great night. Good night, boys and girls.